Wait, I was dating a
No. We really need to clean this line up, or my accent is different. Welcome to episode 7 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing, the F is for, well, you decide. As we ask, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of rockstarcmo.com and chief bottle washer at B2B content marketing agency at ProPingo. This episode was recorded on Friday, the 24th of April. We are still deep in lockdown. Thank you for choosing us to keep you virtual company, and I hope you are safe, well, and staying sane. In this episode, I chat to Kate Bradley Chernis, co-founder and CEO of Lately, an AI-powered social media marketing platform. We learn about Kate's path from reaching 20 million listeners as a Sirius XM DJ to becoming a marketer, how with her father's advice she turned the adversity of sexual harassment into an inspiring path as a serial entrepreneur. Hope you enjoy this conversation. We certainly had some fun recording it. Let's get this started, shall we? Welcome, Kate, to Rockstar CMO FM. I should say Kate Bradley Chernis, as I just rehearsed saying your second name. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be on our radar as a Rockstar CMO.
Yeah, well, so you just asked me how to pronounce my last name, and it was Chernis, and I said rhymes with furnace. And the reason I say that is because my husband is an actual rock star, and his name is Chernis, and they call him Chernis the Furnace. He's a guitar player. And I, of course, I married him because at the time I was in the music industry I spent a dozen years as a rock and roll DJ. Mm-hmm. A bunch of places up and down the eastern seaboard in New York and Vermont and Pittsburgh and the United States, Carolina, and then landed at XM where we were broadcasting at the time. I don't even know what their deal is now, but at the time it was 20 million listeners. So that was like awesome. Kind of a huge deal. I had to forget all the time. Like there's this radio trick. You probably know it from podcasting where you just pretend you're talking to only one person. Because if you really think about it, it's a little bit overwhelming and terrifying. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I met him through radio because as a job hazard, like, I only dated musicians, unfortunately. So, but yeah, so that's a whole lot of backstory in a couple seconds for you.
Yeah, I genuinely believe we are only talking to an audience of one, but that's just my English self-deprecation. But how did you then make the transition from being a DJ, and taking the stage in front of the audio stage in front of 20 million people to becoming to getting into marketing and doing what you do now?
Yeah, well, when I was at XM, it was really fun because that was a startup at the time. I was there a year, 2.5. I started, and I was the first music director for one of the channels, The Loft XM50, actually. And it was, radio has a long history of being a boys' club, and it still is. And I certainly had experienced that before, but suddenly it was just like on this much larger scale. And there was a lot of sexual harassment, which was, I found annoying, but more frustrating was I was constantly ignored. My ideas were ignored, or I was devalued or devalidated, or not given the credit that I deserved for successes we had, etc. And I wasn't alone. The few other female programmers there had the same experience, but it was so intense, actually, the pressure and the stress around it, that my body started reacting, and I just had all these ailments constantly. Yeah. So like, talk about your body, like giving you a sign, mine was starting to scream at me, and it was pretty incredible. So I made a transition. I made a lateral move to different kind of music related company. And when I was there, same kind of thing. There was another boys club and I was dealing with all this stuff and my body wasn't healing. And I was just a crappy person to be around. I was really unhappy and complaining and crying all the time. And I just didn't know what to do. I was overwhelmed by so many things. And so my dad had enough of it. And he lovingly shook me by the shoulders one day. And he was like, you can't work for other people. And there's no shame in that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a revelation.
Yeah, it was a huge, because, this is, I don't know, 15 years ago. And because you had this feeling where college does weird things to you, or in school does, it prepares you for a life that doesn't really exist, right? So you go into life thinking, okay, I need to get an A, right? And like you're doing all the right things and you're like, why am I not getting an A? Because that's not how the world works, right?
Yeah.
And so understanding that mindset and then understanding that I could control it, that there was this whole other opportunity. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess people do this all the time. So I went home and my now husband, but then boyfriend, Chernis the Furnace, he bought me Guy Kawasaki's Art of the Start, the famous startup book.
Oh, wow. Yes.
So smart. Yep. And I read it. I read actually just the first couple of chapters, like right around like page 9 or something. It said, don't make a plan, just get started. And then I thought, well, why am I wasting time reading this book?
Yeah.
So the next day I actually went to lunch with a couple of guys who I didn't know at the time were angel investors, but they were. And we hatched a plan. And literally that week they were like, we want to start a company with you. We love you. We love your ideas. Here's $50,000. And I was like,
sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that out loud on the podcast. It's sweet.
It was sweet. I mean, my husband also was kind of like flummoxed. He's like, I just gave you that book. Like, what happened?
Yeah. Did you ever get past page 9?
No, I didn't. I didn't. Because it really did seem, even before I got to page 9, it seemed 30,000 foot. To be honest with me, like there is no startup book that can tell you what to do. It doesn't exist because we're all doing things that I've never done before, right? So, and I'm I'm one of those impatient people who doesn't read instructions,
yeah. So. I'm the same. I do try it and read, and I love my marketing book collection, and I came from a tech background, and I guess I learnt marketing from books. But I agree with you though about the impatience. So when was that startup? Was that lately that you're doing now? Or was that something else?
That was actually Outlandos Music. So I'm a huge Police fan. I'm a big Andy Summers guitar fan. My husband's a guitar player. I'm into the guitars, and and I love that name of their first record. It means Outlaws of Love, and I fancy myself a bit of an outlaw, and
yes.
So I stole their name.
What little I know of you and our interaction on Rockstar, I think that's a good definition.
Yeah, and it wasn't patented, that name, by the way. And so what we built was actually a music taste making widget. It was like so in radio, so I was in AAA radio, which is adult album alternative. It's a kind of a unique format, and it's designed to play album rock, right? So all of the album, and not just the hits, and then also different kinds of music, like your collection. You have jazz, reggae, rock, whatever, all mixed together. And I was really lucky because I almost always did live radio. XM wasn't live, but we had to make it sound live. Which is another interesting bag of tricks that I learned. On all of these things, by the way, apply to how I do marketing now. But with radio, what I love about it is what I loved about my kind of radio is 2 things. Number one, the theater of the mind, I find is incredibly powerful. It's marketing is all about that, right? And the way that the mind processes music specifically is all based on nostalgia. So in order to process any new song, your brain instantly accesses every note you've ever heard before in your life as you're listening to the song, which forces you to experience nostalgia as you listen to music, which is why it's so powerful. Wow. And so knowing that when you're wanting someone to discover something new, whether it's a marketing idea or a piece of music, you want to couch it or anchor it into something familiar, right? This makes so much sense. And so if I'm a DJ and I'm taking you on a journey, it seems like a one-way street, but there's a two-way street here, because I have to earn your trust and get you to go with me. I need you to get you to digest something you wouldn't normally digest, and maybe even like something that you initially didn't like. That's like the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And so I love that power and that control that I was able to achieve through being a radio DJ. And so with marketing, by the way, I do that all the time. I'm constantly thinking about, like, how can I couch a new idea in something familiar and take you along with me? Yeah. And at the time, that first company was just 2 songs a day. It was a widget, remember widgets? And it was a new song and an older song segued together. Not sometimes by meaning, but I'm more audio or orally inclined. So like it's important to me how things actually segue together and sound together. And so that's what we did. And as I was marketing that, and we pivoted that into different things, music related things over the course of a year. But as I was marketing that, essentially somebody else came along to me and said, "Hey, you're really good at marketing that. Would you come and consult us? And we will pay you a lot more money, and you don't have to listen to any bad music anymore." And I was like, yeah. Sounds great. So
that was your trip into marketing.
Yeah. So that was my, so that was actually Walmart. And so suddenly I had a marketing agency. Yeah.
Awesome. And then when did Lately come about?
So Lately was, fast forward 10 years.
Oh no, it's 10 years. I bet they were 10 good years too. I should be exploring those.
Well, yeah, like I did get married during those 10 years, so that was awesome. But so I guess 2014 now we're in, no, that's not 10 years. I'm lying to you. So that was, the Walmart thing was like 2007, 2008. And then Lately was 2014, right? So almost 10 years. Yeah. So here I am. I had a friend that I met through Walmart, actually, like someone that I had dinner with knew this person and introduced me to him and said, "You guys just really need to know each other," over the phone. Like there wasn't Zoom yet. And at the time from Walmart, I had built this spreadsheet system that got the Walmart project 130% ROI year over year for 3 years.
Wow.
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And Steve, who's this new person I met, knew that. And so was very curious. And I didn't know that he was a tech entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, a CTO, an angel investor. He lived in this whole other world that I knew nothing about. And he was just kind of harassing me about my spreadsheets. Like, dude. And so for a couple of years, he wanted to, because once I had the system for Walmart, I took it to all of my clients because I was like, well, this works,
Yeah.
And so finally one day he was like, why don't we automate your spreadsheets, build some wireframes, and we just need $25,000 to do that. And I was like, get out. $25,000? I worked my whole life to make $25,000, and I'm buying my first house, and don't touch my freaking spreadsheets. So anyways,
but he did.
He took the money out of his own pocket and did it, and showed me a wireframe. So a wireframe, you probably know, is a blueprint of a website, basically, right?
Yeah.
And he said that I was much nicer to him after that.
Wow.
Because it was amazing. I actually didn't even, at the time, I didn't even see, I saw what he had done and I understood the power at the time. But since then, the number one thing that people tell me on a regular basis is, you don't know how big this is. You don't, it's much bigger than you think it is. So,
right. That's good to hear. And it also sounds like you were doing what all marketers are supposed to be doing right now. You were data and programmatic led, by the sounds of things.
Wait, I was dating a programmatic.
We really need to clean this line up, or my accent is terrible. What I actually said was compose myself. It's from you were doing like what a lot of marketers are supposed to be doing. You were being led by the data and being very programmatic about what you were doing.
Data led.
Yes.
yes, yeah.
I think we've been in lockdown too long. Dating, you say? What was that? I remember going out. What was
it's
that?
very rock and roll. And yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's been, I mean, you know, and just tell me to stop whenever you want to, but like this idea of so some of the other things about music that have like tied into marketing for me are, like I said, at XM we were not live, and so we had to make it seem live all the time. And even when I was live, I learned to do different things to make you trust me and to turn up the radio and to come back, right?
Yeah.
And so one of those things was something super powerful that a mentor taught me, which is silence.
Really? You see, I have to talk straight into that. I can't leave silence.
It's hard not to, right?
Yeah.
Really hard. But one thing
you dug the hole, I jumped straight in it.
But no, you demonstrated the point, right? So like it makes you react instantly. So if you're not jumping in like you did or turning it up, right, is another instinct that happens. So, what does silence look like in marketing? Is it space on a page? Is it when you're in a sales pitch? It's not giving the pitch right away. It's getting to know somebody and trickling out the letting it lie. Right, that's what I tell my team. Right. And then another thing that I really loved was this idea of leaving in mistakes. So that we would sound live, and I would even make mistakes on purpose when I was live, but trying to be like, so my radio voice, Ian, is a little more, sultry, right? Rock and roll radio.
That's late night. That is late night right there. Right?
You're listening to, what is it? Rockstar. You're listening to Rockstar CMO Radio with Ian Truscott. So I would try to tamper that with goofiness so that I would be more accessible in general to women also, because I learned, I got the feedback. And then also that dichotomy I discovered was interesting. And that's something that we do at Lately all the time is, right, this juxtaposition between goofiness, seriousness, getting you to, because it all adds up to trust in the end, right? And that's the most powerful thing that we all need in sales and marketing.
Yeah, and I love that. And because I wasn't a DJ that had 2 million listeners, 20 million listeners. I can't remember what you said, but I had. But when I was young, and you just made me remember this. When I was young, I used to do a little bit of DJing, and you were always conscious of the next record you put on, whether it was going to clear the dance floor or keep people on, and you were trying to keep, like you were saying, keep that trust going that you were going to do the right thing. And I think that's interesting. One of the other things, I'm perfectly happy to talk more about music and marketing. That's really good. But I would like to share a little bit about Lately. What does it do for your clients? I mean, you've talked about this spreadsheet at Walmart. You talked about the fact that everybody's saying it's bigger than it really ought to be. I really ought to let you have an opportunity to tell us a little bit about it.
Well, thanks, and great segue. So Lately, by the way, is named Lately because your marketing is only as good as your last piece, right? That trust, like you just said, has to be ongoing, and so you have to continually, keep it happening. And it's also named after that Van Morrison song, "Have I Told You That I Love You Lately?" But anyway, so what I discovered from the Walmart project was that marketers don't like writing. They hate it. People in general hate writing, turns out. I was a fiction writing major, so I like writing. Wow. And I found that the other thing I noticed was that there was a lot of long form content, as there is now, being created in the world, whether it's blogs, videos, podcasts, newsletters, and it pretty much evaporates after the fact, right? So for all of marketing and sales, everybody is very much in this immediacy, has been trained to think about the immediacy, the now of marketing. Whereas, even 10 years ago, I was already thinking, well, how can we maximize this legacy content? I'm going to call it, right? Because I just spent 5 hours writing a blog, and if you're just going to talk about it once publicly, maybe twice, and the headline will be something vapid like "Check out my blog, kill me now," then what a waste. Right? So what Lately does is it uses legacy content like that to automatically learn what your customers care about, and then build a writing model based on what it learns, so it can transform that legacy content into droves of mini movie trailers for whatever it is. So for example, this podcast, you would copy, paste, push button, 1.8 seconds. You would get several dozen social posts with matching mini audio clips, and then you can syndicate those out to the world.
Right. Yeah, I've seen it in action in my feed, obviously, because I follow you and various folks, and you did a podcast recently, and I saw it happening in my very feed. So it was really it was really interesting. But that sounds very cool. I'll obviously include a link to your website and a really cool product video that I saw in the show notes. One other thing we were talking about before we started recording this was you were talking about, and this goes back to your background in music. You were talking about marketing being consumed like TV or music, like the way we're moving our consumption habits. Well, what did you mean by that?
Yeah. So again, this idea of the legacy content, because it was really getting to me, the waste of time putting into this. And so, the way that we've watched people now show us that how they're digesting the things that were live, radio, TV, etc., that's gone, right? We all want after the fact, and so we're binge watching, etc. And there's because the value of live, in my mind, there's only one value of live, and that value is human connection in a space, actually, which is interesting, what we're all missing right now and why, right? But the information or the entertainment or whatever it is, that value isn't on the live, it's on the after, and which is why we go back to it all the time, by the way. And so this idea of taking media and giving us the ability to listen to it after and chunking it is now actually transforming into marketing. Now, I've been doing this for almost a dozen years, but it's the same way. So if I'm going to take a piece of marketing and break it up, or content, right? Break it up into and trickle that out to you, your brain is already set to digest it in that way. So as marketers, we have to constantly now think about what are we producing that can be published and digested in that way. Right. So like I met a company, gosh, I can't remember their name. I feel bad about that, but they do text marketing, and they take, they do text marketing for companies with like how to use the products, and they trickle out the how-tos over text.
Oh,
so
wow.
They give you a lesson over time in little text messages. And I thought, that's exactly what everyone wants, because no one except for my husband has the patience to watch, a 20-minute YouTube on how to plumb your sink.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I heard an analogy, which is that the new marketing is going to be if Netflix and a webinar had a baby, that we're going to start, especially with us now all in lockdown, and we're consuming a lot more video content and audio content, that this is now the way that we need to think. We need to think like Netflix. We need to think like Spotify in the way that we publish our content.
Exactly. And if I may, so this is how Lately works, right? So Lately, it's artificial intelligence based. So the same way Netflix learned what we all wanted to watch, right? And then it took that data and started recommending you more shows based on what it learned. And then see how smart they are? They're like, well, now we know what you guys all want to watch. We're going to create original content based on that data and make that the number one reason that people come here, which now it is. It's the most watched content on Netflix, right? And that's what we do too.
Oh, splendid. Also, just to move back to our backstage conversation that I mentioned earlier on, I was really interested in, you put me onto this guy, Bryan Karmer. And he was talking about human to human, which is kind of like what we're talking about right now. Now, I'm a little bit embarrassed because I've been talking about business to people, but human to human, and that's a one-sided argument. Business to people, you've recognized there's people, but you're talking about business still. So it's human to human really works. Tell us about that inspiration.
Yeah, so Bryan Karmer is a friend of mine, an amazing marketing mogul, and so he coined this phrase H to H, human to human, and the idea was there's no more B2B, there's no more B2C, it's H to H, right? Which seems so obvious, right? to me and you, because this is sort of our nature already, but to most companies, it's still really hard for them to get their heads around. And you're seeing it now more than ever, actually, like with the COVID marketing, which is frankly nauseating. Like if I hear one more commercial or read one more blog post that says like, in these uncertain times, come on, like you don't need to qualify. We're all experiencing the deal, but it's so powerful. Like it's very simple. You purchase things based on emotion. We all do, right? That's why they pitch a lot of stuff to women, because they're the number one buyers in the household, generally speaking. And that's what the data tells us, is that women are more emotional. I'm not saying this general fact. I'm saying this is what the data says. Just so haters don't get on me. And probably why they people spend so much money on ads during used to spend money on ads during soap operas. Now I feel like I'm dating myself because I don't even know soap operas exist anymore.
Well, I mean, my marketing education tells me that soap operas are called soap operas because of the adverts. So, because they originally used to advertise soap, I think it was one of the big,
right.
Yeah, I
and they're so emotional.
Or somebody invented them way back in the day in the US. I think
it's true, and they're so emotional based though. So like, what a great time to get someone when they're like open, But so this idea of emotion based marketing, it's very how do I say this? It's very wolfish, right? So like, we're not dumb. We know when to get you. When we know how to do it, and it's this idea of making you trust me. We've been talking about this before, in order to buy from me. And the power, sorry to cut you off, the power of, and it also, by the way, puts a big focus on one-on-one marketing, which is costly, but the power of that is actually so much greater because of the after effect, because it's because exactly what I used to do, which is, there's a big difference between a listener and a fan. If I get you to be my fan, you're a whole nother mouth for me, a microphone, right?
Yeah, for sure. And what I thought was interesting there is that, lots of what you said was interesting. I didn't mean to just pick on one thing. But the human-to-human thing is interesting because I tend to work in B2B primarily. And I actually think that the emotion around a B2B purchase is actually higher than if you're deciding what you're going to buy based on what you see in the soap opera, because your career could be on the line. Your status in the office could be on. These are big emotional things to people. So I think that in B2B, this is incredibly appropriate that you have this human touch and this empathy for those emotions that are going on.
True. And also admitting it. I mean, I think that's probably been the biggest hurdle, is like, let's face it, like white men in an office admitting that the purchasing is based on emotion.
It is. It's a good point. And yes, and I got turned on to Bryan Karmer. I started reading his stuff. I think you're absolutely right to be influenced by him. I think it's really interesting work. Now, earlier on, you said vapid checkout in your. You were talking about the old blogs where we just say, check this out, and then it would die. And you actually, for people that don't know, on Rockstar CMO, we have a regular piece called the Rockstar CMO Swimming Pool, where we throw all the bullshit and snake oil of marketing in the vain hope it would never return. And when I spoke to you last time, you chucked checkout and vapid CTAs into the Rockstar Swimming Pool. Do you still stick with that, or is there something new that we can bung the filter up with?
Well, that one never gets old. I mean, and I hear it. I hear it all the time. It does. I mean, it is a pet peeve. It just irks me because there's so many beautiful verbs that you can use that can replace that one. It's just
I think you said verbs are your friend as a marketer.
They are. I mean, this is, again, we have this. There's the emotion, but then there's the standing out. That's a big part of it. And verbs help you do both. I was telling someone, so I have a book that it's right here in my, I don't have an office full of books at all. I have an office full of weight equipment at the moment, like a lot of people do. But in my drawers, I have one book, and it's called L is for Lollygag, Quirky Words for a Clever Tongue. And it's one of my favorite books. It has nouns and verbs also, but like I'll just read you a few of the words: contrawise, pugilist, helter-skelter, whirligig, bellicose, capricious, knickerbockers. Right. So these are interesting. Yellow-bellied. There's a great one. And some of these are over the top, and you don't need to be over the top all the time, but I use them to jog my memory and my mind. And you've seen me do it, like whether it's verbs or, so in real life, Ian, I swear like a sailor. I'm a foul-mouthed hooligan. Awful.
People that listen to this podcast know that of me as well.
Oh, do they? Well, so like, I love that show. I just binge watched Ballers the last couple of months, and I was like, these are my people. It was awesome. So anyways, in order to replicate that online, because I don't think that's the smartest thing for a CEO to be doing, for me anyways, for our business.
No, you're right.
So I have to get it out there. Like, so you'll see me say like, holy hot butter peanut butter sandwiches, or like jumping jalapenos, or just stupid corny, because I'm corny,
I think you're right, and I think that and this is something that really to explore about appearing different, I think is important for brands, absolutely. And I think that you're obviously doing that very well, and I think these words are really interesting, but also the fear of doing that. I mean, I as I said, I'm from B2B tech background, and almost you ask a question of a marketing team and they all scurry away and look at what their competitors are doing. And then you create this sort of goldfish bowl of vapidness, to use your word there. Mm-hmm. And it's all the bloody same. And then what, I actually have done this. I've cut and pasted content from the website of the vendor that I was working for and put alongside it the content, the copy from our competitors, and asked the executives to identify what was ours. And they can't. You know what I mean? We're all the leading vendor of bloody blah, right? So I think that's really interesting to take that a little bit further from what you were saying about the vapid CTA. What about the vapid content?
That is like the best trick. I'm going to share that with like my marketing consultant friends, because I think that's a challenge that people have, is like, how do you get the brass to like understand the value?
Yeah, you have to be sensitive to it, and you're not hurting anybody's feelings, but it's the way to go.
Yeah, and the thing is too, one thing there is like, this is about making money, right? We're not just talking about here's nice ways to connect with people for the fun and joy of connecting with people. Like, let's be honest, this is yada yada, like like I'm not sure. The human to human thing is, it's not a fluffy whatever dress we're putting on here. It's like this is very, very much business oriented. And I think that's the hardest thing that people don't get. Even like, we've been noticing with my own team, like, just because you're on social media, I think a lot of people take this for granted. Just because you're on social media doesn't mean that you can hard pitch somebody or certainly cold pitch them, right? They now, it used to be a little bit more flex, because there was this sort of like new idea and this new platform, and just because we're connected, I do trust you. But that has actually changed, and the standards have gotten higher, and you have to do that more trickle out behavior that I was talking about before. Start the conversation, and everybody's eyes roll, right? Because first of all, salespeople don't want to do work the same way marketers don't want to do work. Yeah. But like, hey, guess what? This is, life takes work. Like, this is the deal. It's not instant.
Well, that's what gets me about when people are talking about social selling, like this new thing. It's you're establishing a relationship, and that's selling. That's sales and marketing all the way. But what I also liked was your mention there of growth, and I'm conscious of time, so I hope you're fine with Karen chatting. But do you think that marketers have lost their way a little bit in the fact that we're here to sell something?
Meaning like which way? Like
that we just churn out all of this Me Too content, and we don't actually think about the building relationships and actually closing a deal and making some cash.
Yeah, for sure they don't. There's and it's on both sides, both sales and marketing teams and their bosses like still are that's why they're siloed. Why is it even called this different things? Like, it should just be called sales or smarketing or I don't know what it is, but like like growth. Yes, growth is the name. That is the best thing to call it. And in the startup world, they are doing that. I've noticed as well. There was a weird thing there for a while where they were calling customer service, customer success. Like we've been followed into that, which is, I mean, that's bullshit. Come on, like people can read right through that, right? But yeah, I think it'll always be a weird battle. Like,
yeah,
maybe we'll change it, but it's kind of like I was a line cook for a long time, and it's like the waitrons, which we call them in the kitchen. Sorry, wait staff, waitrons versus the line cook, and that constant friction, of devaluing each other's role in the.
Yeah, and it was actually something I was going to raise when you were talking about human to human and talking about the game, because I think the other thing is that when we're selling and being sold to, we know that we're in that game, right? To suggest that you're going to sneak up on somebody with a bit of social selling and they won't realise they're being sold to is ridiculous. We all know that that's the human to human thing, right? We know what's going on here.
100%. And here's a friend of mine actually once told me this, which is, it's great. And once you know it and then look for it, you'll see it happening. Salespeople love to be sold to. They love it.
Yeah. I've known a few. And there was one guy that I worked with, and one of his favourite things was buying cars. He just loved it. Well, I mean, sales guys stereotypically like to buy cars anyway, but he just loved that whole, research case, the negotiation, the game. Yeah, he just liked it as a sales guy. You're absolutely right. We clearly could talk to each other for a long time, and I'm conscious of the fact that we have this one listener, and they may have hung up by now. But so finally, where can people find you when they spin the dial on the interwebs, and on Twitter and LinkedIn and obviously trylately.com?
Yeah. So Ian, you are cool. Yes. Trylately.com, and they can get me directly at kate@trylately.com, and at all the social fabulous places we're at Trylately.
Yes.
So yeah, it'd be awesome. Thank you so much.
No, well, thank you for your time, and thank you for the conversation. I'll include all the links in the show notes, and thank you very much. That's it, episode 7 of Rockstar CMO FM in the can, ready to be pressed and loaded into your podcasting jukebox. Thank you for listening, and to Kate for sharing her backstage story. Lots to take away from that. Personally, I like the advice from radio about your silence, and I think we could learn a thing or two about that, and how mistakes makes us authentically present, and we make a few of those. As this is only episode 7, we'd love your feedback. You can find us at Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn. And please subscribe on the podcasting platform of your choice if you did like what you heard. Until next time, I'm your host, Ian Truscott. Please stay safe, stay well, stay sane, and thank you for listening to Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.